what I recognized was like, oh, wow, this external agency is really defining our identity. I really just requested, hey, can I just take a pass at that work? I am somebody who has struggled with a lot of self-doubt. It's what really amazed me about my own experience with CrossFit. I want to live these last decades of my life to the absolute fullest expression in the richness of life, keeping this foundation of health and fitness in place. How do we bring people into that legacy who weren't here, who haven't been here? And that's really, really important.
Hello everyone, I'm Denise Thomas and welcome to the very first episode of the CrossFit Podcast. So basically, if you love CrossFit, you're in the right place. Because this is where we're going to welcome guests who dedicate their lives to making the world healthier. We're going to dig into the unique experiences, motivations, and all the expertise that our community and like-minded people share. So, who am I and how did I get this gig? Well, who knows? I'm still asking that question, but I'm here. And I've been with CrossFit for about 16 years. I'm a coach, a member of CrossFit seminar staff, where I have had the privilege of working with some of the best humans on the planet. And for our first episode, we're starting with a bang. Because this week, to kick us off, we have Nicole Carroll. Now, many of you know Nicole because she's a CrossFit OG. She's the queen of CrossFit and a force in our community. Super smart, super fit, and yet so humble. And she will usually try to stay out of the limelight. But we wanted her to come on the show and give you the story behind one of CrossFit's most influential people and why her journey and experience with CrossFit has positioned her as the defender of the realm, the leader of the Jedi Knights, the one who probably wakes up every day to figure out how we can continue to preserve CrossFit's DNA and inspire people to take control of their health and fitness. Your fitness journey, it's always been, for the last 20 years, it's been CrossFit, but just a chronological kind of timeline. Like, what did you do when you were a little younger? And then as you got maybe into your teens and your 20s or wherever, and then whenever you found CrossFit, like, what does that timeline look like?
Yeah. Okay. Well, when I was real young, so I don't actually remember what age, but my dad was a bodybuilder. He was a police officer and a bodybuilder, police officer vocationally, and then kind of amateur bodybuilder, but competitive. He entered a bunch of natural shows and just was all in. Like, I would say his job was his job, but his passion was bodybuilding. And so, I think I was relatively young. I mean, for as long as I can remember, that's how I remember my dad is, as a bodybuilder. And so growing up around gyms, and particularly he was very much of the Arnold pumping iron generation. And so a lot of, I don't even remember his gym being a Globo gym per se. It was more, I think it was called JD's Health Club or JD's Garage. And it was single owner, also a bodybuilder. And it was primarily, free weights, obviously still some machines, but it was very different probably than what your typical kind of Globo gym looked like at the time. So I just kind of grew up going to the gym with my dad and was back squatting. Back squatting in particular stands out to me as something from a very young age. And I have no idea how it was discovered, or I just remember being like 12 years old in the gym with my dad, lifting weights. And I don't know why, levers, size, shape, you know what I mean? All the things that I was always a really strong squatter. And so I remember things like, like hanging out with my dad, lifting some weights, and then, it'd be back squat time and he would like call his big friends over and
Yo,
like,
Jim,
hey, check out,
Jim,
look how much my
here.
daughter can back squat. Yeah. So
what was your
then,
best back squat ever?
Geez, I don't remember. Oh, my best ever was 300. So, I mean, I think probably given what women squat now, I don't know how impressive that is. But for me, that was
I think it's
a
still
huge
impressive
milestone. And that's definitely not my max back squat right now. But that was, at my best, that was my best. I remember that was a big PR for me. So, at that time, I don't remember what it was. So, I grew up very much surrounded by fitness, and even the way my dad would eat, we didn't necessarily eat like my dad. Like I grew up Italian mother. And so we had lots of pasta, pizza. But also my dad's influence was very much protein, vegetables. So that was also in the mix. And, my mother she would cook for all of us, but we definitely had pizza night and love pasta. And I've always been blessed with whatever metabolism. I'm a pretty good metabolizer of carbohydrates, and I can put them away. So
yeah, you've always, ever since I've known you, you've been pretty jacked. I mean, there's pictures.
Yeah, I have that. That's like I used to sort of say, like, if I just look at a weight, I feel like my muscles grow. Like it's just what my body does. It's not actually probably the aesthetic of like being really jacked was never something I strove for. I mean, certainly I strove. There was probably more so prior to CrossFit. It was more of an aesthetic thing, like versus a like health thing, like, but it just was something ingrained in me, really. Is just like, this is what you do. You stay healthy, you work out, you run, or you go to the gym, or you play sports. And that was a big part of growing up for me. And in high school, I played sports. I ran track. I ran cross country, which was not my favorite, but I loved the coach. And so I did it.
You did track and cross country, or is cross country
different
track?
Seasons though. They were different. I think they were seasonally different. So I was able to do both, if I remember correctly.
What was your event
at my school
for track?
Oh, geez. I
feel like you were like, you have to have been like 100 meter, 200.
Sprinter. Yeah. 100 meters. The jumping thing, the broad jumping. Yeah.
Wait, you did broad jump too? The long jump?
Yeah.
That's, I mean, because
you're not how good I was at any of that.
I mean, how tall are you? You were like, what, 5?
Short. 5'3".
And they had you do the long jump.
Yeah, well, it was high school,
Yeah, you're like,
but I was always like kind of a little powerful athlete, right? So I mean, even when I played volleyball, I was an outside hitter, which I think that speaks to two things, right? The kind of caliber of the team I was on, and not taking anything away from my great high school volleyball team, but it was like I could jump really high, and I was really powerful, and I was really aggressive, and so I was an outside hitter. Really, for my career in volleyball, being a setter would have been a better thing for me to learn, but I was never necessarily drawn to kind of like the finer
hand-eye
articulation,
coordination.
or I just want to like slam, like
I've seen you play. What's that game we play? The basketball shootout. Is it when you?
Knockout.
Knockout.
I try to stay away from those games.
The double-handed like granny shot thing. One of those. So you were involved in sports. It's not in fitness. It's not like all of a sudden you found CrossFit and it was this entire new world. But you've always been interested. You've always been in that environment ever since a young age. Yeah,
it was, and in many ways, it was how I found CrossFit, because I had been really I've been going to a Gold's Gym and working out, and I just, again, it was just something, I did a bunch of yoga for really right before CrossFit, I was really, really into yoga for about 4 years. But even then, I would go to the gym and still train. And so it just was something that was very much a part of my life. So yeah, it wasn't, and actually I started doing CrossFit, pulling the workouts off the website and doing them at Gold's Gym. And it was only when Tony Budding, I don't know if you remember him, but he was the media, CrossFit media guy.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Budding, Tony and I met at Mount Madonna Center, at the yoga center that I was living and working at. And he was actually coaching their girls volleyball team. And he was wanting to learn the Olympic lifts in order to train the girls that he was coaching. And so he went into CrossFit Santa Cruz, and because that was the only place where they were actually teaching those, where he could kind of learn, the technique and all the things so that he could teach them to the girls. And he was the one who told me that I should go into this CrossFit gym in Santa Cruz. And that was CrossFit Santa Cruz. And my first class was there, and it was with Greg. Greg was my coach. And so it just was, and I think what happened, CrossFit for sure, I would say within the first 3 months, I could be remembering incorrectly, but for sure within the first 6 months, I knew I'll never do anything else. Like nothing, like the way that I felt in my body, and just the way that I felt, the physical capabilities that I was gaining affect, my confidence levels. I think kind of like a sense of, whether you call it resiliency or inner strength, or just really this feeling of, okay, like, wow, my physical presence in the world feels different in a really, really good way. And yeah, like I'm in, this is it. And, it just really changed my perspective on training, on working out in so many ways. And so that was the hook for me. And I still feel that way. And it's why I say, I want everybody I love doing this. I want everybody you love doing this, because I just feel like if you're going to spend time in a gym, there is nothing more effective for CrossFit than CrossFit for kind of like the return on investment, the bang for your buck. Like what you will get for the time spent is, I think, exponentially better than what you'll get anywhere else. And certainly, again, you can debate that, but it's very, very true for me.
Yeah. I mean, we call it the one-stop shop for everything, right? It's fitness, it's health, it's food, it's community. We could talk for about 5 hours about CrossFit. So I got to get back to you and who you are, and why are you rightfully so the first guest on the CrossFit podcast? So, can you tell us all, like, what do you do for CrossFit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Well, I think, the bulk of my time with CrossFit since 2004 in some way or another has been in the education and training space, whether it was as a coach, working early seminars, and then eventually in 2008, running the training department, it was called at that time, with Dave Castro, then running it myself, I think maybe until about 23, sometime in 2023, was GM of education and training. And then in 2023, I actually requested to move into a brand role, which I'm still in now. And it's interesting because I think the kind of impetus for that was, brand is really interesting to me because it's associated with marketing a lot, right? And typically it's owned by marketing. And the way it is now is just sort of its own kind of department and team that I oversee. And it's still very heavy on the education. Like I sort of retained the portion of EDU that is the content creators. So TPC, the youth coaches YouTube, the content that will get created for different courses, course updates, things like that. Like that still is within my purview. But then the brand work was really in response to, we had brought this agency in to do some brand work. And it's, I think it was challenging for me because what I recognized was like, oh, wow, this kind of external agency is really defining our identity. I think of it a lot when I...
Sorry, Nicole, can I just, when you say brand,
Mhm.
we hear that word a lot, brand, in other industries too. What does that mean?
Yeah, I am not incredibly well-versed in what it means outside of what I've sort of been enabled to do, what I wanted to do with it, and what, in many ways, Don has sort of said, yeah, hey, do it. I'm in. And it was just, I think brand really becomes like self. I think of brand, which is sort of this statement or this touchstone of like, why do you exist, right? What's your purpose in the world as a business? And, just that, what are you about really? Like, what are the core tenets of what you're about? What are the things that are non-negotiable and inviolable?
Okay.
And so for me, it was like, oh, wow, that's interesting because I saw, oh, okay, so they're doing all this brand work and it's like, it's really trying to define all those things that just make us who we are. And for me, that had always been done through education. And then watching that kind of transition to marketing, it was like, okay, I think with some of this work that was done by an external agency, and this was before Dawn, and it felt to me like there was a danger of missing some of the things that make CrossFit and make it just so potent, so different. Just those things I think that we all really care about that attracted myself, yourself, and others to it. I really just requested, hey, can I just take a pass at that work and really bring back in the legacy that is CrossFit? And can we, it's so important to me that we pull that into our future. And so I just had that conversation with Don and he was totally on board. And so that was when Dave actually took over kind of the education line of business. And then I retained that portion of it that was very, very content development heavy. But then I just started working on those kind of fundamentals that could be the touchstone for like a marketing org, for example. And so I don't really work in marketing, but I've sort of created the what is the kind of like informational touchstone. If you're trying to understand how do we show up, who are we, what do we care about, that kind of body of work would be the touchstone for that. And so that my role for, I guess, most of 23 was really working on that. And then Jenna came on board to run marketing recently, just last year. And really that's kind of been, I think, the missing piece to the work because she's phenomenal. And really, really invested in the work that's been done, by me for the brand. And so there's been just internal education, for the marketing team that I've done. And I think that work has sort of culminated in that. And then it's really there for marketing to run with myself as kind of an advisor for them. But the bulk of my daily work, and probably even more and more so this year, is really still kind of the educational side of that and the educational content side, and really that substantive work that actually is the brand that makes CrossFit, that education piece, whether it be for coaches or more broadly, for people just coming to CrossFit and seeing us as as a brand for education, as an entity. I mean, even the word brand sometimes is weird for me to use, but like, that's what CrossFit is. We are kind of empowering you toward this ownership of your health and your fitness. And you can go to an affiliate, or you should be able to pull from our website, from the content that we develop, everything you need to even just do this thing in your garage if you want to. And so that is really where, that's really where I'm focused. And then as I think it shifts now away from kind of that foundational work of brand, like becoming a little bit more integrated into education is kind of where I'll go this year. And, that's exciting. Just working closely. It's impossible for me to not have a foot in education, and working closely with Dave and the team. And I'm really looking forward to that. So I don't know, that's a really long-winded answer to what I do for CrossFit, but it's largely, whether internally or the team that I run and the content we put out. And I mean, it largely still is an educational role that is really dead set on preserving the things that make CrossFit so unique and so potent, and making sure that we can pull that into our future. We go through a lot, but there are things that we need to make sure that we don't let go of, that make us who we are and enable our potency in the world. And it's like important for me that the world is not deprived of those things, that we don't get distracted, and the world isn't deprived of the things that make CrossFit so just so good. Just so good for people. Just such a good option. When I talk about our vision of making the world a healthier place, and I always sort of caveat it with like, yeah, I get it. That can sound really, maybe it can sound a little cheese dick even, to be like, oh, well, we make the world a healthier place. But I think we genuinely do, right? I think CrossFit is a lifeline for people in so many ways, because it is a guaranteed return on your investment in your health and your fitness. And it is incredibly sticky, in a sense that I think it keeps people coming back for so long. I mean, I don't know of many other programs where you've got people who are doing this same fitness program for decades. And that's not insignificant. And, the results that we've delivered, it is phenomenal. And the number of people and the size of CrossFit and the global kind of footprint that it has, it's just a really unequivocally good thing for humanity. And yeah, that matters. It matters a lot to me that's preserved no matter what.
I was going to ask earlier, like, why you? Like, how do you get this role, Nicole? And it's
I'm just a pain in the ass, so they give it to me to shut me up.
You just you're just like knocking on Don's door every day. Can I do it now? Can I do it now? But no, it makes complete sense with your experience in in CrossFit over the last 2 decades. I mean, there's been ups and downs and ups and downs, and you just believe in CrossFit, I think, more than me. And I know I believe in it a lot. And it's when we listen to how you speak, and I've got some clips here I'm going to pull up in a second. It's just it's just so obvious why you never, like, quote, jump ship, why other things might have come in and out, but you were like, no, this simple, bold and elegant program where we challenge people relative to their ability and we ask them to do, quote, hard things.
Yeah.
And we want them to come back, and we care about them as a human, and we care about what they do inside and outside the walls of the gym. It's clear that this brand role, as the company grows, that it was more needed now in this day than it was back then when our company was so small and everybody was literally almost in the same room talking about it.
In the absence of Greg, our founder, who was consistently defining that, there was a risk of getting confused. And I think some of that confusion happened, candidly, right? Like, I think we found ourselves there. And it is what sort of incited me to be like, okay, I can help here. And I can, again, like, assuming kind of this educational or teacher role is like, how do we bring people into that legacy who haven't been, who weren't here, who haven't been here. And that's really, really important for us to be able to do, in order for CrossFit to be a lasting presence and a potent presence for decades more to come, which is what I want for it. Mm-hmm. And it's just that is, I think, really important and really even recognized by Don. So how did I get the role? It was like, well, he was on board with that and saw the same things. And I think, again, somebody like Jenna sees the same things and is on board, and that's great, and sure, like, it's the post-acquisition time. It has been a confusing, hard time and a place of regaining our footing. And I think we're still in that place of regaining our footing. But, I know we can do it. We need to do it. And the other thing that I think, for me too, that is like, really, I feel like I learned the work by looking at what, like, the people doing it do. So when I look at what affiliates deliver and how they deliver it, when I look at seminar staff and what they deliver and how they deliver it, and it's like, I know that was born out of, right, the very, very small gym in Santa Cruz, for all the reasons, but it's like reverse engineering that and then trying to bring people into it who, again, didn't necessarily have the benefit of that experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the other thing that's always kept me going, is just the people, the people who I've worked with, who've worked for me, who we serve out in the world in affiliates and coaches. And again, people just coming to the website and doing CrossFit. That is something that has also always kept me going. It's like, I want people to experience the same potency of kind of this undiluted CrossFit experience that has done so much good for myself and for others. And you see all those stories, they hear your stories and the things that people are doing with CrossFit, what we're doing on this podcast in terms of highlighting people from the community who are using CrossFit to do just like great things in the world, working with underserved youth, addiction recovery, cancer recovery. Like, there's just so that this, I always call it this pay it forward spirit. And I think it was Matt Swift who I stole this from, but it's like that notion that when something changes your life so profoundly, you can't help but want to pass it on. And I think that that's the power of CrossFit. And it's like, well, what other fitness program are people using to, in addiction recovery, and like in all of those, hear your stories, and you look at the incredible impact it's had in many ways, like we were talking about earlier on myself, where you get this kind of holistic impact that is so much more than just getting a good workout in. And it's like, well, what's the formula for that? What's the recipe for that? And let's just make sure that we all know what that is. And we all understand that those things are non-negotiable. And so I think I really took that wherever I wanted, Denise. So
that's what I love about you, Nicole. I'm just taking notes, but yeah, it really is more than a fitness program. I mean, just look at the work. People like Helen Taylor, Dale King, these people, they're just like real life angels that they care. And I'm, for one, obviously I work in education. Maybe now this, this is the new thing. I'm a rookie. This thing, whatever it is, but
this is education. This is the other thing we're working on. Yeah.
But I already know that you've got a couple of hundred red shirts who are already like fist bumping the air because they know that you've always been involved in EDU, but to know that you're going to have even more of a footprint back in there is really exciting. And you would always speak at our summits that we would have annually when, always such a great time. We get all the red shirts together, seminar staff, and yourself, Greg, would always open up a notebook full of things. And then you would get up, and Dave, and it was always super empowering. And that word gets used a lot, empowering, but it truly was. It was like, man, we would run through a brick wall after these speeches. And you have mentioned a few times about like defending the realm and preserving the DNA of what we do and keeping CrossFit meaning sharing the potency of the dose that we all experience like way back, and that we owe that to people. So I've got this clip that I want to play.
But I see these challenges as more complex, though, than the first generation faced, than my generation faced. We were revolutionaries. We were fighting a clear enemy. They looked and sounded really different from us. It was easy to distinguish. There was light, there was dark, and we were motherfucking Jedi Knights. But when the enemy is gray, it's harder to distinguish, and the new fight is less revolution and more resolution. We aren't so much changing the course of things as we are ensuring they continue to go in the right direction. No forgetting who we are, no letting the world forget. This is the job of the new generations, the preservation of the level 1 kernel, our DNA. What it's doing is it's ensuring that when this message reaches those who still need it most for years to come, and it will, that they get the full benefit of the undiluted potency of this program, just like you did.
I just get so fired up. And something you always tell me, you're always so, I say, gracious in your feedback to us as staff. Yeah, some people may have heard this before, but you were always the first to tell me, hey, Denise, your stories are great, but maybe think, are they of value to the people listening, or are they self-indulgent? Or I'd be like, man, she's right. I'm just telling this story. Or I'd be like, hey, Denise, do you have a brush? Nobody could say that with such poise. And you're like, oh, God, or you'd sit behind the camera and you'd be like, So every time I get on this, I'm like, all right, Nicole's here. I got to be ready. But this is who you are. You have these standards. You give the feedback that it needs to be given. And it's clear why people really gravitate towards you. Like you get up and you say things like that. And you mentioned this, it was a revolution, maybe back in, the OG's era. Yeah. And now it's this like resolution. Can you just speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. It's funny. As I was listening to that, I thought, wow, it's like, it's maybe even more relevant now, parts of it, than it was then, in terms of the noise and the imitators. And I think there's, a lot of, it's interesting. I see a lot of capitalization on whether they're innocent misunderstandings or kind of intentionally taking common misunderstandings of CrossFit and using that as a problem to sort of market something better. And I think that there is this, again, what CrossFit has always offered is this really simple and direct path to health, right? And to kind of this transformative experience of having agency over your health, of fitness and real fitness. And again, like talking about your return on investment for your time in the gym, and then even just what all of that lends to more broadly in terms of how it impacts just humans' well-being on all levels. And I think that resolution is incredibly important and not from a dogmatic place, but just from a place of like, hey, be careful of bells and whistles and shiny objects and, the minutia, the majoring in the minors, that I think can actually be a distraction from just what is fundamentally important. And I think the core tenets that are CrossFit, call it the level 1 kernel, call it the technology that kind of drives the program, right? That kind of core operating system, that is tried and true. And it is, it works. It's interesting to me how we can regress in the name of progress in so many areas of life. I don't think just as it pertains to CrossFit, and whether it's just bored or latest thing or
interest, curiosity.
And it's not, I'm not saying it's bad to explore those things or understand them. But I do think our job and seminar staff job is to sort of recognize those things for what they are. I think the danger is if we start to get distracted, you find yourself little distraction down the road. And then someone comes back with just the hardcore fundamentals of the program somewhere down the road, and it's working really well. And now it's the next newest, greatest thing. And we're just standing there with our, metaphorical dicks in our hands. Like, wait a minute, but we did that ages ago. And it's like, yeah, we did. And we lost our way. And so there needs to be a recognition of the potency and the efficacy of what we do. And again, a continual education, a continual watching, a continual desire to get the best results for the people that we work with. And I think we need to be very, very careful of what motivates change, right? We need to be really, really aware and honest of what those motivations are. And I don't think it should be popularity or jumping on a bandwagon or people being bored. Or our job is to actually be resolute in the things we know work, in this kind of simple, direct path to, a level of health and fitness that I think people can't really imagine until they've been consistently doing CrossFit for some time. And so I think that's what I mean by that.
And we've said that, just one more question, because we get this all the time, and you've heard it, I've heard it. Why hasn't the level 1 changed? And you spoke to it a little bit just then with your belief behind what we do and the potency of it. But why hasn't the level 1 evolved, or has it evolved? And what of those changes? I mean, what is your response to that question?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff my response to that question is often I have other questions that pop into my head, which is,
and sorry, Nicole, just the people that are listening, when I say the level 1, I'm referring to the CrossFit level 1 certificate course, which is our introductory level course to the foundations of CrossFit, the basic movements, the conceptual frameworks. So that's where the level 1 is that. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, to say, so I do think the course is being continually iterated upon. It always has been. And I think where you iterate is to be kind of relevant in a given context, right? In terms of your examples, your analogies, your kind of modernity of the issues at hand. And so, in delivering the lectures and the material, you're setting it in a present day context. I think the nutrition lecture is probably one that's evolved the most, the nutrition education, because we used to be so zone heavy. And then really that lecture has evolved to incorporate, other nutritional strategies that work in terms of health and performance, and still that 40-30-30 baseline in terms of a starting point for most people. But it's also recognizing the zone was leaned on so heavily because it afforded this measurability that wasn't around yet, kind of the block system and what you could do with weighing and measuring your food, and then using blocks to determine how you're balancing your meals. There were no apps, there were no MyFitnessPals, there was no macros or easy way to count your macros. And so that was really what the zone was for. And then as the landscape changed, and now you do have these, apps that you can use, and it's like, so you're sort of modernizing it, but you're not changing the underlying principle or recommendation, right? Because that is something that works, right? Weighing and measuring your food, knowing your inputs and outputs is the way that you will optimize. Now you can also just eat whole unprocessed foods, right? And get yourself, get yourself nice and healthy. Like that is good. And then taking it a step further, if you want to invest in weighing and measuring and optimizing and really being able to play with those levers to sort of optimize or maybe target something, you've got those tools. And that doesn't change. And I don't know that like the prescription of eat mostly whole unprocessed foods or, meats and vegetables, some fruit, low starch. It's like, well, what in that needs to evolve? And it's like when human physiology evolves beyond the point of that being really optimal for human health, like we can look at that, but human physiology hasn't and doesn't change that quickly. Right. And so, and that's, I think that's the thought process of resolution. And then the other pieces I think is like, well, you think about that course, it introduces CrossFit. What is CrossFit? It introduces our definition of fitness. It introduces our definition of health. It introduces the important core relationship between technique and intensity, right? And the importance of technique, the fact that they're not at odds. It introduces the underpinnings of our programming so that you can program for best results against the constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity and the movements that we use, right? And kind of that expanding the margins of your experience through your programming, hitting enough, consistently enough that you're making gains, and expanding the margins of experience enough so that you're consistently working your weaknesses. And so, and that it introduces the foundational movements of the program, which are foundational in the sense that what you learn there they are the foundation of almost everything you'll do, certainly on your feet in CrossFit. And then we've got the pull up and the muscle up, and you can take much deeper dives into all of that stuff, but you can't do it in a weekend. And so in terms of an introduction to CrossFit, I think my question would be what needs to evolve and change there, because those, and I think what it is I don't think, my answer is really nothing in terms of that kernel. What you're always looking at are better ways to communicate and educate. What do these things mean and how do we apply them to ourselves and to the people, given the goals of the people? How do we apply them? But that's not necessarily the place for this introduction to CrossFit, right? That is, I think, a function of continuing education. And so sometimes what I hear in that question is maybe more in the context of that, like, why do I need to go back to the level one, right? And of this kind of like you get at that 5-year mark and there's this, well, I've evolved and changed as a coach. And so, why is it that I'm going back to this course that's kind of teaching me these same old foundational things? Now, two things to that. I do believe in many ways that there is a continuing education model and opportunity that we have yet to seize for coaches that would be really, really valuable. And so part of me is really sympathetic to that, to the reval model. And without dorking out into all the constraints as to why it is that way, and has been for so long, it is something I think that we need to actively look at, sort of, this a continuing education model for coaches that meets them developmentally every step of the way from the very, very minute they complete the level 1 course, right? And so I am sympathetic to that, but and at the same time, I actually think that there is value, and I think so many of us have gone. I mean, I can sit through a level 1, and depending on who's giving the lecture, it is just great to have that touchstone with that kind of again, that core operating system, because everything in any way you're going to apply it, it's like, that is where it will emanate from. And that a really solid foundation in the fundamentals that course is providing, it actually, it gives you, it reminds me a little bit of, virtuosity, in the sense of, you can rush through the basics, you can rush through the fundamentals, you can rush through the foundation, but actually it is those fundamentals and the solidity there that ultimately gives you the ability to move into something like mastery. Because if you haven't, on the way to mastery, you'll have to back down, right? Mm-hmm. Back down and kind of relearn those fundamentals in order to actually truly master the thing. And I think whether you're talking about doing CrossFit as an athlete, that's true. I think certainly when you're talking about coaching CrossFit, that's true. And so that would be my response to that. And I think maybe the criticism again just comes from potentially something that probably is a little frustrating to people, in terms of it being a model that like a credentialing model, that feels like maybe something's missing for people. And I am sympathetic to that. And I think we try to hit those wickets in so many ways in terms of the content we provide, and especially things like the coach's YouTube now, and the professional coach, and your online courses, and the level 2. There's always the level 2 option. There's always the level 3 option where you can maintain it with continuing education credits. And so, but I do understand. I do understand where the question comes from. I just think, in a way, whoever was asking it, I would just ask more questions to get probably to really nail the response, or, understand what exactly should change. Because I don't think you're talking about the definition of CrossFit, the definition of fitness, the definition of health, the fundamentals of programming, the foundational movements. And I get it. People want to take deeper dives into other movements, and there's a lot of movements in CrossFit. And I just think, though, in terms of foundational and that kind of pattern matching that can happen when you're really solid in those 9 fundamental movements that you can attain as a coach, it's like there's not that many variations on that theme that you will see in movements that people do on their feet. And so anyway, I think that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think, you got me sold on it. It's introductory, but it's fundamental, fundamental, foundational. They don't go away, and your ability to do them is really hard, and you're continuing to master that. I remember hearing you say again that CrossFit is more relevant now than ever before. And what do you mean by that?
I think what I mean by it is that I think that there is this, well, obviously we understand the chronic disease epidemic, right? You've got 70% of the global population dying annually from chronic disease, lifestyle related, preventable by, or at least mitigated by, lifestyle interventions like CrossFit, right? Exercise, and obviously I believe CrossFit is the best way to do it, and nutrition, and basically the core tenets of our program exactly address that. I think the other piece of it too is you've also got this kind of epidemic of social isolation. You've got an epidemic, I think, of disempowerment. I think I just really appreciate just kind of the big, strong, simple messages of CrossFit, right? Show up 3 or more times a week, do the work, eat mostly whole foods in, unprocessed foods and quantities that support exercise and not excess body fat. And I just think that gets people exactly where they need to be in terms of, in terms of not falling prey to all of that stuff that is really on tap so easily by the mainstream, whether it's food industry or pharmaceutical industry or like what we were talking about earlier in terms of the social media and the just being on your phones and your devices and not connecting with other humans, and just the disempowerment that comes from maybe giving away your agency to an expert rather than really having the tools and the education so that you can take control of all of that for yourself. And I do believe that CrossFit gyms are this ready-made lifeline. And I always call them like these Trojan horses of goodness, where you might go in thinking you're just getting a good workout, but you get so much more. And yeah, I do believe that what we have to offer at CrossFit is more relevant now than ever in the world. And it is, I think these kind of like beacons of hope and health in a world that sometimes feels like that's really not what's going on here. That's not what we're running into or what's pulling at us or the messages we're getting every day. So
people think of health and they immediately go to the physiology, your blood pressure, your body fat, your triglycerides, those things. But how do we define health? What is CrossFit's definition of health?
Fitness over a lifetime or increased work capacity across broad time, modal, and age domains. And so it's really this notion of you hanging on to that functional capacity for as long as possible, right? And the absence of disease. So where you would have those biomarkers in their optimal or healthy ranges, again, for the duration of your life. And so it's that combination of functional capacity, and I call it vitality, but it really, I think it's the absence of disease.
Yes, when we talk that connection between fitness and health, and how you're as healthy as you are fit and you're fit as you are healthy, is because the definition of fitness, the definition of health includes the definition of fitness, where
yes.
We're speaking to longevity, right?
Yes.
You're going to be pretty much like a badass human for a really long time.
Longevity is an interesting word to me, because I don't know that it's necessary that you just, I get it. Like we all want to live as long as possible, and that's
not if
fair.
we're
right. It includes the ability to just be physically capable of engaging with life and the demands of life. And, you talked about getting up out of the toilet, getting out of a car, getting up, right, unassisted, and kind of remaining functionally independent, and that type of agency for as long as possible. And that's where those performance markers, people think high level performance, but it's really just, I think of it a lot as just being able to engage with life, and that you're not, for as long as possible, that you can sort of stave off that decrepitude that puts you in a position of dependency or inability to do the things that you want to be able to do physically.
And I've heard on this 2023 health summit that you spoke at, you opened it up, and it was this summit where you brought in all these subject matter experts, and they talked about different areas of health. Mm-hmm. And it was awesome. We'll include the link also in the show notes. And you said, like a younger Nicole, you didn't really care too much about the health, the blood
right.
work and the labs, and but now you do. And that's kind of the way it is, right? And when you're younger, you're just living your life, you're doing your thing. And I mean, I said earlier, you've always been jacked. I mean, you could look at the mirror and be like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I look pretty solid. I don't need to take care of my health. how do we, and do we, as a brand, expose more people to the benefits or the importance of that, taking control of your health at an earlier age?
Yeah.
Or can we? Can we? Or is it just something you've got to learn?
I think you can. I think you can just talk about it more. And I think people understanding that CrossFit is for health, and that is a fundamental thing that we want the world to understand more about us. But the youth is an interesting thing, right? Because it's not that any of this information wasn't in front of me when I was younger. It's just that you're just benching off of your own experience. And I think I probably said something in that lecture along the lines of, of all the decisions that I've made for myself when I was younger, the 20-year investment in CrossFit, now sitting here as the almost 50-year-old Nicole, is like, okay, yeah, girl, good job. Because the buffer that's been built is significant. And there are just things, nobody escapes the aging process. And there are things, no matter how well you eat, no matter how well you work out, there are things that certainly will decline outside of your control and that you will have to contend with. But I think the buffer that's created from that investment, it's so significant. And that would be the only way that, like without sounding like the old lady in the room talking to the young bucks who are just like, man, I'm just tearing it up. You know what I mean? Like, whatever, grandma.
What do you know?
I would just say, like, I look back and I think, wow, I'm just really, really thankful for that investment that I made without even recognizing it so much as an investment at the time, because I was just chasing different things. And I was, again, talk about the program being sticky. I was the fly on the fly paper. You know what I mean? Like I'm stuck. Like this is what I do. This is what I'm doing. It's just part of my life now. And I'm very, very grateful for CrossFit, obviously. And we've talked about that a lot, but also just for myself and making that decision and having that discipline and that consistency and just continuing on with it is it truly does create a buffer and that foundation as you kind of enter your later stages of life for still being able to live your best life, where you are not contending with or distracted by things that are within your control to improve, and again, for your own benefit, no judgment in any of it toward anybody in saying that, but just that we genuinely do have control over it. And I think that, and that other piece too, I think I did talked about it before, but that I also have taken that agency that CrossFit has offered and the processes of weighing and measuring my food and scoring my workouts and deep diving into the methodology and all of the educational experience and tools that I've taken from CrossFit, I can also take outward. And as I'm researching other things or looking at other things, is like I have confidence in being able to do that for myself. And in being able to, again, take control of my health and my fitness that's in my hands, or whatever it can be in my hands is in my hands. And I have the confidence to use that and take that out into the world to my advantage. And I do think that kind of N of one self-experimentation that I talk about is like, we have built, whether they know it or not, a whole cohort of humans that is armed with that kind of confidence. And again, when you've got so much stuff on tap, I think that's trying to tell you, no, this way, this is the better way, this is the better way. It's like, hey, stopwatch, food scale, benchmarks, results from the lab, period. And like, let's look at inputs and outputs. What's happening? And now the patience and the discipline. And is it easy? No. Is it simple? Yes. And is that the message that we want to keep pounding the drum on? Yes. It's so important.
Yeah, and that's why the affiliates are so magical, because all this stuff is just happening. It's just happening, and before you know it, you're tripping in the woods and you're catching yourself, and you're like, and you're 45 years old and you're like CrossFit. Like you don't even, you might not even make the connection, but it's like if you're just sat in and again, no like shade on this if this is what you want to do, but if you are just sat in a fixed machine, extending your legs up and down, it's likely that you're not going to have that control, that awareness, that body, all the things to stop yourself.
The readiness. Yeah.
The readiness. Right. Yeah. This GPP, bring it full circle. And, the buffer is insane. I mean, there's no too late. It's not like, well, I'm 68 now and I'm on the other side of the good life. I'm just going to ride this ship out. It's like, no, get into the gym or, pick up the phone, call me, call Nicole, like, show up, listen to these things because you're just triggered. Like the coolest thing for me about that. And again, I'm, pushing 50, right? So I'm not 68 yet. No, you're not. No, you're not. You don't age.
But I think that there are so many things that at this age, I feel like, I've developed in terms of, really like this kind of full appreciation for who I am, what my talents are, what I want to be doing, and just confidence levels and belief in myself. And it's like, man, I even more am committed to let's not let my health, like I want to live these last decades of my life to the absolute fullest expression in the richness of life. And this notion that keeping this foundation of health and fitness in place so that I can do that and that I'm not having to kind of tend to these physical ailments or limitations or to the point where I can't fully live into all of the goodness I think that comes with getting older, really, in terms of your wisdom and your knowledge of self and your resilience and just all of those things that I think just get better as you get older. And this idea that you can continue to have the physical health so that can express to the fullest it's just a really cool thing, something I'm really grateful for, and something that even has in many ways, I think you go through stages of relationship to CrossFit and to training, and it's like recommitting to training from that place and that goal versus maybe when I was younger and it was very much about, just crushing workouts and just kind of showing up and getting the best time or getting heavier lifts. And that's all still cool. But I think the relationship and my goals have changed, and that this program, can serve me well and potentially even better than it did then is awesome. It's just, again, I'm just really grateful for it.
I'm going to pull up another Nicole clip from the Health Summit. And then we'll talk about it after.
Physiology and community, they have both a natural and an intentional component to them. And CrossFit speaks to the natural realities of human physiology and the equally real and fundamental needs of the human person living in a social world. And our approach intentionally generates health in both dimensions. And then there's the synergy and the alchemy here, which creates that richer experience of what health over a lifetime can really mean, right? How good can this actually get? And we give that to people. And once you experience it for yourself and you know how you got there, it's really difficult not to obsess over something along the lines of, I need to get my mom, partner, friend, neighbor I just met to try this. I need to get everyone I love doing this. I need to get everyone you love doing this, right? And there's a good chance you shamelessly go on and on and on about it. And that's probably how we got this.
The cult. We get a bad rap, right, for being a cult.
Sure.
But explain that. Explain why that has become a thing for us and why it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I think I think that's what I was getting at in that clip, was just that when something really changes your life so profoundly on so many levels, that it's almost impossible not to talk about it and not to want to get the people that you care about trying it and doing it. And I just think that that cult moniker, and the enthusiasm that people have for it, it really just comes from that place. I've never thought, I love that. I love that graphic. I think I got it from the Chase and his folks. I think it's, what are they at? OG Culture or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love it. And I love embracing that we're a cult. I mean, you can leave anytime you want. So ultimately we're not a cult, but
you won't want to leave. You won't want to leave. All right. Now, what am I missing? Is there anything else you want to share with the people listening, with me? Like, what do you want to end on?
Man, I don't know. I think I've said so much. I think just really for me, it's that message of recognizing the importance of what, if I were, I guess maybe I'm directing my message more to affiliates and coaches in this, but, really recognizing the power of the tool that you have with CrossFit and not underestimating what you're doing for the world and for people day in and day out. What you're doing is CrossFit. It is the brand. It is the heart of the whole damn thing. And it is the thing that is literally changing the world for the better. It is quite literally, you are making the world a healthier place. And just that, I don't know, just if I could every day just provide that daily little dose of, touch point to the large and great impact that maybe these seemingly day-to-day, things, but that doing that from a place of genuinely caring is so powerful and good. And so maybe that's all I would say.
I think that's perfect to end on that. You heard it from, Mama Nicole, we'll call you, the queen of CrossFit. But it's true. The daily efforts of affiliate owners, coaches, and members, and anybody that talks about CrossFit, like you said, you want anybody you know and love, and anybody that you know that you love that loves somebody else. Like, let's just get talking about it. And, for all we know, we're going to save more lives for sure. Thank you, Nicole.
All right, Denise, thank you. This has been awesome.
And there we have it, everyone. Man, I get so fired up after listening to Nicole because it's just always so refreshing, educational, and honestly, I just feel like I want to run through a freaking brick wall when it's over. And I'm sure we'll have a lot more time with her in the future, especially if I get my way. But for now, let's shift gears to our CrossFit community. Now, after each episode, we're going to throw some love and appreciation to members of the community who are out there just getting stuff done. These people embody what it means to be a CrossFitter, and they serve selflessly for those who they love and care for because that's just who they are and what they do. This week, we get to highlight Keefa Hawkins from CrossFit Iconz with a Z, out of Lilburn, Georgia. Go Dogs! Keefa is a 15-year affiliate owner and runs a non-profit out of her gym called Next Steps Fitness and Rehabilitation. Now, this is a program designed specifically for disabled veterans who have been discharged from the hospital, they've completed all the physical therapy, and now they want support in rediscovering an active life that they love. And her program currently provides free CrossFit classes, nutrition guidance, and social support to 37 veterans. And her dream doesn't end there. It's to scale it up to serve hundreds, if not thousands. Now, I don't know Keefa personally, but I've heard that her energy is insane and it's super contagious. So if you find yourself in the Lilburn, Atlanta area, pop into CrossFit Iconz and say hi. She would probably love that. Now, if you want to learn more about Next Steps, head over to vetsteps.org. And Keefa, CrossFit is going to offer you CrossFit Level 1 or Level 2 course of your choice, just for being such a ray of sunshine and for taking care of others. So go choose your own adventure, lady. Now, you at home, if you're watching this and thinking, hey, I know someone who deserves some shout out love for the CrossFit community service, let us know through the link that we'll provide in the show notes. And don't be shy. Just get it in. Press send. And before we go, you know it. The time is here. Yep, the Open is upon us. And registration is live. We have 3 workouts across 3 weeks, starting February 27th, ending March 17th. And if you've done the Open before, you know the deal. It's time to put your fitness to the test. Look at where you've been, to where you are, and then use that to help you go forward, to keep increasing your work capacity across broad time and modal domains. And if you're new to the Open and you're like, is it for me? Should I do the Open? The answer is yes! Let's get out there, let's establish a baseline of fitness to test against moving forward. And quite honestly, it's just a whole lot of fun. It's Open season, baby. So head over to games.crossfit.com to sign up, and you bet I'll see you on the leaderboard. All right, we did it. Episode 1. And that's it for this week, folks. So enjoy the rest of your morning, your afternoon, or your evening. You guys rule, and we will see you right back here soon for another episode of the CrossFit Podcast. Oh, and remember, almost squatting below parallel isn't below parallel. So get lower. All right, everyone. Bye for now, you beautiful people. Mwah.